I'm Janet Clark, and this is The Freedom Shift. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Freedom Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Janet Clark, and today's episode is a subject that is really near and dear to my heart. We're going to be talking about the lost art of prospecting. If you've ever been following me for a while now, you know that I'm all about helping coaches and consultants to sell their high-ticket, high-transformation programs using my HeartFlow sales system. If you don't know about that, I detailed it back in episode 5. So in case you missed it, just head on over to www.thefreedomshiftpodcast.com, and you can do that later on, and you'll be able to catch that episode number 5. And you'll also be able to get a copy of my ebook there, which describes that HeartFlow sales process. But anyway, let's get back to what we're talking about today, which is the subject of prospecting. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you been noticing that it's getting harder and harder to close sales for your programs? It's actually becoming a lot harder to do the model that most high-ticket salespeople were kind of brought up on, right? Which is that Facebook ad to webinar to sales call strategy. It seems as though it's pretty much run its course. We've seemed to also have reached critical mass when it comes to the point that most people, if they've been in this online world for any amount of time, have been burned by high-ticket swindlers, right? Who are those savvy copywriters and marketers who promise the world and then end up taking your money and running. So I don't know about you, but it certainly has happened to me. And more than likely, if it hasn't happened to you, it's happened to somebody that you know or some clients that you've actually been working with. And one of the things that is becoming very clear is that there's a fallout happening right now. There are definitely honest, reliable, impactful coaches and consultants like us who have a track record of delivering results, and we are 100% committed to making an impact for our clients. But unfortunately, we have to overcome the damage that has been done by those unsavory ones. And we're finding that just sending someone to a webinar or having a meet and greet conversation with them on the phone isn't working the way that it was a year or two ago. Now, I'm in the trenches every single day working with coaches and sales teams, and I can tell you that it is much harder to close these types of leads than it used to be. So there are 2 ways to overcome this. And those are prospecting and follow-up. And actually, in a way, follow-up is really kind of part of prospecting. But these are 2 of the key sales steps that I learned early in my consultative selling days, way back when I was in the corporate world. And I've noticed that prospecting and follow-up have become less of a sales focus with the advent of online marketing. Now, I'm going to do an episode and really dig deeper into follow-up later. But today, I want to focus on this lost art of prospecting and why it's so important. So let's first define prospecting. It is the process of searching for potential clients in order to develop a relationship, keyword, that results in more business. So I'm going to say that again. It is the process of searching for potential clients in order to develop a relationship that results in more business. The end goal of prospecting is to move the prospects through a process. Often we call that the sales funnel, until they eventually convert to revenue-producing clients. A few top coaches are able to do this just by using an online funnel, but typically that is a funnel that's extremely personalized to the individual. So what do I mean by this? Well, one example of this is Ryan Levesque, who many of you know I am on his team, in his enrollment team, and his company is called the Ask Method Company. Now, Ryan segments his prospects, and he has invested significant time, money, and psychology into automating his messaging through videos and emails that speak to his prospects in a very personal way. So in a lot of ways, even though he's using an online marketing approach, it's very personalized to the individual. But I want you to remember also that Ryan and other high-level coaches like him, people like Lisa Sasevich or Frank Kern or Alex Mendozian, they also do a lot of other marketing things, right? They speak from stages. They belong to high-level masterminds. They attend industry events. They network with other JV partners. They have huge followings in their Facebook groups. And these coaches who are in the multi-million-dollar range, they have invested years perfecting their online messaging and marketing and doing relationship building. So let's talk about the rest of us. Those that are generating between 6 and 7 figures in our business, not yet at the multi-million-dollar or celebrity status. How do we find and build these relationships with our ideal prospects? Obviously, we still need to be doing marketing, which is where we position ourselves and our point of view. But what's the difference between marketing and prospecting? And this is why I say that prospecting is a lost art, because a lot of people don't know the difference. So marketing is a function in and of itself, and prospecting is actually a function of the sales process. So let me explain this in another way. Marketing is messaging one to many, and prospecting is messaging one to one. Marketing includes your branding, your offer, and your unique value proposition. And elements of marketing would be things like your website, your email campaigns, your Facebook groups, your webinar, and any online training programs that you have out there. Now, prospecting is when you or someone representing your business develops a one-to-one relationship that ultimately results in a sale of your product or your service. So prospecting efforts include things like cultivating individual relationships with individual leads, attending networking events or conferences to meet people face to face, personalized follow-up with leads, phone conversations that you have with people to discuss pain points, and then setting sales appointments or strategy calls. So prospecting is happening prior to a sales call. Now, marketing is establishing ways for your prospects to get to know you before they start into the one-on-one relationship with you. But let's now focusing in on prospecting. There's 2 types of prospecting or ways that you can really establish one-on-one conversation. Those would be inbound and outbound. Now, inbound is when you're using this attraction marketing to get someone to actually maybe pick up the phone and call you, to reach out to you, to raise their hand, to engage in conversation. So sometimes they see something that you've put out there, some content, or your webinar or an ad or something, and they'll reach out to you in Messenger. So that would be an inbound marketing where you then get to have a conversation with that person individually. With inbound marketing, you might set up chats or you might set up short little discovery calls. And typically the first conversation in the high ticket world would not be a sales call, right? Because we're selling a high ticket program, but we need to get these people warmed up. We have to build a relationship with them before we actually get it onto a sales call. Some will use messenger chat, email chat, or some sort of a triage call to get to know you before they actually have the sales conversation. Outbound marketing is when someone representing your company reaches out by email, social media, outbound messaging, or cold calling, which is really the old way. And cold calling still works in the B2B world, but it's just less effective in the online world, obviously. especially in the coaching and consulting world. Remember that we are focusing more on selling to someone who is investing in their own transformation, not someone who is spending a corporate budget. So that's why the methodology of cold calling is a little bit different. So let's talk about something interesting that I've realized, in that most coaches are heavily focused on the inbound marketing piece of their business. And they're doing very little outbound prospecting. And that's really what I want to dig into today. It's interesting to note that even larger companies that proclaim to be experts in inbound marketing, companies like HubSpot, who actually coined the term inbound marketing, Salesforce, and even other coaching companies like Clients on Demand or Traffic and Funnels, they promote the inbound marketing, right? Put your webinar out there, get your people to come through the webinar and then book a sales call. But these companies all invest heavily in outbound prospecting as well. And that's the part that they don't always tell you. So this outbound prospecting has to fit into your sales strategy. The goal of prospecting is to create interest in your service or your offer, and then convert that interest into a sales meeting. That does not mean that you are looking for anyone that happens to be interested in purchasing a service, because if they get on a call and they are just looking and they have no knowledge of you or your program or your service, they're not ready to buy. And they may have a desire, but they're not ready to take action. So before someone invests in a high-ticket, high-transformation program, two things have to happen. And I've talked about this before. One, they have to know, like, and trust the coach that's going to be delivering the program and know that that program works. That has to happen prior to them coming onto the sales call. Because the number two thing that they have to know before they're going to invest is, will the program work for me? Now, if you're on a sales call with people who don't know you, they don't know your program works, and the conversation is all about who you are and what you offer, that sale's not going to close. The sales call has to be about, will it work for me? That is when you and or your salesperson can use this HeartFlow system to enroll a new client. But you can't use the HeartFlow system if you're actually talking to people about the mechanics of your program and trying to convince them that it's a program that works. So most coaches are not trained in sales very well. Some get some training in coaching and sales, but technically, people that are going into coaching or consulting are good at what they do. And unless they happen to be a sales coach like I am, they're not going to be very good at sales. Or it's just not the thing that they really feel most comfortable doing, which is really a great reason to bring on a professional salesperson. But look, you really can't bring a professional salesperson on until you can at least enroll people into your program and prove that your program is a desirable program and that people will buy it and get results from it. So I'm assuming that at this point, most of you out there have already got to that point. But you may find that when you try to sell, you are focusing on getting better at the closing, and you're trying to figure out how to learn better closing techniques. But look, all the techniques in the world are not going to fix the problem of talking to an unqualified prospect. So on the other hand, if you would focus on learning how to prospect effectively, you would find that the entire sales conversation is much smoother and much easier. As Frank Kern, who's a multi-million-dollar coach and actually is a sales expert, says in his words, I find the idea of trying to sell anybody anything to be very intimidating and frustrating. The very idea of trying to sell something makes my skin crawl. Huh? Would you expect that from somebody who is an expert at sales? Absolutely not. But what he has figured out is that there is a better way to do prospecting so that by the time the person actually gets on the sales call, it's easy to enroll them. So how does he do that? Well, he does it by having conversations with people that convince them that they want to buy from him before they ever get on a sales call. Now, back in my early days of selling, I learned this acronym, which is AIDA, A-I-D-A. And it stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And great prospecting involves the first two, capturing their attention, stimulating their interest, and then sort of leads into this idea of creating desire. Then you can get on a sales call with them and you can help them to take action. But if you're getting people on a sales call and you're trying to use that call to get their attention, to generate their interest and create desire, you're not going to close the sale. The difference between top prospectors and mediocre ones is not a huge difference in their talent or their ability. It's really the attention that they pay to the process, to the things that they have to do in order to move somebody along through the buying process. And they do these things very, very well over and over again. But the people who are not paying attention to these details, too often, they find themselves just wanting to make the sale, and they don't take the time to build the relationship. Your ability to find more and more prospects is only limited by your imagination and your willingness to invest the time. Why burn through those inbound leads when what's really needed is outreach and more one-on-one conversations? Now, in the book, The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy, he says, creative prospecting is essential to your success. It begins with thorough planning and analysis, and it starts with these three questions. So the first question is, what are the 5 to 10 most attractive features of your program? The second is, what specific needs of your prospective customer does your product satisfy? And then the third is, what does your company offer that other companies do not offer? What is your area of excellence? And I think that it's worth going through that exercise to really get clear on that. Then you must determine who exactly is your customer. Make a list of all the qualities and characteristics that your ideal customer would have. And that could be age, education, occupation, income level, experience, attitude, need. I mean, there's a lot of things that would play into that. And the greater clarity that you have in identifying your ideal customer, the easier it's going to be for you to find these customers to talk to. And I love this. He says, when you first approach your prospect, your first word should be the equivalent of throwing a brick through a plate glass window. So you really need to develop an opening statement or a question that's going to get their complete attention. This sentence should always be aimed at the result or the benefit that the prospect is going to receive from your product or service, but not mentioning the product or service itself. Now, my marketing partner, Tobin Slavin, is the one who actually taught me how to do this even better in my own coaching business. And he has a program which he calls Conversations at Scale. And it's a step-by-step process for prospecting on LinkedIn. And this is exactly what he teaches: how to ask a question that hooks or grabs the attention of your prospect. And that question can't be about you, your program, or your service. And that is where so many coaches, so many consultants are making the mistake in their prospecting. They're going out there and they're talking about themselves. when it can't be about you, you have to make it about the prospect. They are the most important person. Think of it like shining the spotlight on them. And that is how you're going to get them to engage in a conversation with you. And as Tobin has said many times, he says, I used to lay awake at night wondering how to get a more consistent flow of new clients. So referrals are great, but they're not consistent. I realized that if I could just get in more conversations, I would get more qualified prospects. And that is the goal of prospecting, to engage in more conversations with your ideal prospects. And when you do this the right way, you establish yourself as a friend, an advisor, and a teacher, which will dramatically increase the number of qualified leads and dramatically lower the stress that you're probably feeling right now from your sales calls. You will radically reduce the likelihood of failure and or rejection. And both you and the prospect is going to feel much more comfortable and relaxed when you do get to the sales call, and your salespeople. So what's awesome about this prospecting approach is that when you position yourself as a teacher, and this is something that I also emphasize in the HeartFlow system. So T, HeartFlow is an acronym, and each letter in the acronym stands for sort of a stage that you take people through in a process. And T is right in the middle, and it stands for teaching. Because when you teach somebody something, you're building your authority and your trust. So you have to start doing this right in the beginning before you actually even get on that sales call with them. And then you get to do it more when you're on the sales call as well. And this in turn is what is going to build the desire within the prospect to work with you and to then enroll in your program. Once that desire is created, it's time to offer a strategy session or an enrollment call. Now you can have the right conversation, not about who you are or whether your program works, but now you can have the conversation about will it work for them. So look, the bottom line is this. If you are struggling right now with your close ratio, if you're finding yourself or your salespeople who are on calls with unqualified leads, if you're experiencing a lot of cancellations and no-shows, then it's time to put prospecting back into your sales process. You can do it by hiring an outbound sales team or a lead generation team, something that we've actually now added to our offer in the Sales Map program. And we do our prospecting through LinkedIn, which is the business platform that is designed specifically for making these business connections. And it works much better than Facebook. Or you can hire salespeople who you pay a base salary to do your prospecting. Because remember, prospecting is a function of sales. And if your people don't know how to do it, or they're unwilling to do it, or for whatever reason, you feel that your salespeople are just so busy and good at the closing part of something, then you need to work around that. And you need to figure out, who could you bring in that would help you with this prospecting piece of it? It doesn't have to be your high-level salesperson because, maybe your best salespeople really do need to focus all of their time on these strategy calls, but they have to be on calls with qualified buyers. So you may need a different level of salesperson to handle the outreach and the qualifying calls, and sometimes a little bit of a different personality, more of a nurturing type of person, somebody that has this innate curiosity and really does want to outreach and talk to these people and figure out how you can help them in a very effective way. Now, I'm always happy to chat with you about this because it works for us. And so I'm always happy when people reach out and ask me, what's working? What can I do? Because I'm running into this problem. And I'll be happy to share with you what we're doing. So I want you to remember that the most important way to increase your sales is to only get on sales calls with people who are ready to buy. And the more time you or your salespeople spend on strategy calls with better prospects, the more sales you're going to close. and the happier you and your sales team is going to be. So that's a big message for today. Excited that I got to share it with you. And I really appreciate you for tuning into this and for staying and listening to this, because it's really important. And I actually have a lot more to say on this subject, including, as I mentioned earlier, how to follow up effectively. So my goal is always to help you increase your sales success, to have a high close ratio, and to create consistent cash flow. Now, believe me, if it was easy, everyone would be a huge success, because there's a ton of coaches out there that actually have really good programs, but they never get them off the ground. And the reason is because they're not following the sales process and they're forgetting the step of prospecting. So it's not that easy, but it's also not that hard either. You just have to be willing to make the effort and to do the things the right way, because there really are no shortcuts. So for today, I'm going to sign off. I'll be back next week, and I'll leave you with this thought: have a wonderfully productive, happy week prospecting. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Freedom Shift Podcast. If you want more great information about increasing your sales, visit our website, www.thefreedomshift.com/podcast.